last week what it cost to buy Kingdoms of Amalur and 38 Studios IP. Do you have any guesses? How much it cost to buy that?
You said $1 million.
I'm going to say 18 mil.
5.
Ben, you got a guess?
3.
And Ian, you got a guess?
Oh man.
I feel like $1 million is
Did I
nothing
say $1
in
million last week?
2018.
Yeah.
It's really close. $900K.
I was gonna say like
wow.
700. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it cost.
They're giving it away.
Apparently,
Well,
it was
uh,
like steeped in legal troubles too.
Yeah, here we go. End corrections music, please, because it's time for a new. Help us out, Hoeg. I asked Hoeg about this. I asked Hoeg like what happened, who owned Amalur,
Kurt Schilling.
who was keeping onto it. Well, dude, he like ran out of money.
Yeah.
he got liquidated. So Hoeg filled me in on that, the process in which you have to go through buying Amalur. And so we got a lot of information. Let's tackle it, Jones.
Who even owned Amalur, and how did THQ buy it?
Yeah.
There are a number of different kinds of bankruptcy, but they can be relatively neatly divided into reorganization and liquidation. Or, said another way, the company is either going to try to make a go of it, reorganization, or that's the end, liquidation. I didn't follow the 38 issue that closely when it happened, but it looks like in 2013, they ultimately determined to liquidate. When that happens, what is known as a bankruptcy estate comes into being. Think of this in the same manner as a deceased person's estate. Essentially, the company 38 Studios goes away and is replaced by a federal entity, the bankruptcy estate, that determines through a bankruptcy trustee, a fiduciary, how best to sell the company's assets in order to get a maximum possible return for the company's creditors. Still likely pennies on the dollar.
Stop there for a sec. So I asked him about 900K. I was like, is that a lot? Was that the right price? And he was talking about the fiduciary, the person who has fiduciary duty, how that person's job is just to make sure they get the most money possible for the thing that they're selling. I think that's a pretty cool job. Yeah. Continue, please, Johns.
In December of 2013, we see that a public auction was held for the 38 assets, but it appears that there were no bidders, or none that the court accepted. One stumbling block may have been in the fine print. A purchaser may also develop ports, expansions, and downloadable content for the original title, but Electronic Arts has the exclusive right to publish such content.
So, if you want to do Kingdoms of Amalur remastered, you can't. Only EA can. They've retained those rights.
So you got to do a sequel.
Yep.
Or prequel.
Or DLC. I didn't realize you could do DLC
Yeah.
for Kingdoms of Amalur.
So the easiest way to monetize the assets in HD remaster is off the table until EA gets its pound of flesh. Since no one bought the assets,
Hoeg, that's
they
nice.
effectively sat in the bankruptcy estate. Since they consist primarily of IP, there is likely little storage cost there, so not a ton of incentive to move them from the court's perspective.
Love that. So basically, the state owns it. So the state owns all of 38 Studios IP, just hanging out. And then until somebody, like they had an auction, nobody wanted it. And so THQ had to seek that out and offer 900K, and they had to say yes. That's nuts to me.
Pretty crazy.
And they're still in debt from the money they lent to 38 Studios. So 900K is like, okay, it's like the best they could probably get for Kingdoms of Amalur. I don't know how many other buyers there were out there, but they're still in the red for what they lent out to that studio.
Yeah. Makes you want to it makes you think, like, would just making a new IP be better? At the same time, you're getting a recognized name for, 900K. So you kind of like
worth it, dude.
you already start
Amalur?
with a fan base. I don't know.
I really enjoyed Kingdoms of Amalur.
It's got a big
And
following.
I would be excited for more of it.
Hoeg said it was okay. I asked, like, is that too much? He's like, no, it's pretty good. 900K is not bad for a game that did well. It did okay.
Really curious to see what they could do.
Also wonder how much street cred THQ has for just doing this. They've done this a lot lately.
Yes.
And I wonder if they're seeing
They're
a lot of
buying
positive
up, dude.
feedback from people.
Right.
I wonder if it's kind of a Netflix situation where Netflix is just pumping out so much original
It
content.
totally is. That's a great
and
analogy.
it's like you're gonna be bankrupt. What are you doing? You know, like
Yes.
they're not making the money back, but they're like, we want to be known as a content creator. You know, that you can find if you like stand-up comedy, if you like anime, if you like all sorts of different shows. We got it. We can make
Yeah.
our own stuff that
I
nobody
don't
else
think,
has.
Jones, I don't think THQ does any anime things.
So, well, you never know.
Okay.
We couldn't have called Amalur, so we'll see where we are next week.
You gotta climb up the ladder.
Kind of along these lines, I then asked Hoeg what it would take to buy other IP that's just sitting around. And so specifically I asked for Tiny Tank. I said, what would it take for Easy Allies to buy Tiny Tank? If you're not familiar, a cool PS1 game where you're a little yellow tank.
Okay.
You know the game?
No, I very much do not. I was
Okay,
wondering. I was like,
yeah.
did I miss the podcast episode
No.
where we discussed Tiny Tank?
I was trying to think of a game. I was like, what can we buy? What can we buy? Tiny Tank. Like, can I buy Tiny Tank? And so here's what Hoeg said.
Can we buy Tiny Tank?
Yeah.
You are probably familiar with this from years of reporting on the industry, but video gaming has not always been good about dotting its I's and crossing its T's when it comes to making sure it is clear who owns what and in respect of which property. There are a number of games which are locked up simply because no one can unravel who has the rights, and you can't afford to sink money into a project when people will come out of the woodwork with their hands out if it proves a success. See Kotaku's article on No One Lives Forever for my favorite example of this. Looking simply at Tiny Tank, it is said to have been published by Sony Computer Entertainment, but produced by MGM Interactive, with development by And Now and Appaloosa, with any of those companies, some of which may not presently exist, having the baseline rights to the IP. Now, if you simply wanted to re-release the game, chances are you could just go to Sony, but A, they'd probably ask for more than you would like, and B, you couldn't likely do anything with the IP save but a re-release. See the example publishing provision that applies to EA's rights in Amalur, for example,
Right.
unless they were smart enough to negotiate for the baseline IP assets as part of their publishing deal. Given the age of the property, you might not be able to find good documentation showing anyone's ownership rights at all, which is a long way of saying the whole inquiry process could make for a fun video or video series in terms of having talks with Sony's, MGM's, and Appaloosas. With the Sony's, MGM's, and Appaloosas of the world. But I wouldn't anticipate a high likelihood of success there. Sorry about that.
Sorry about that. In the comments, if you have a lead on what it would take for Easy Allies to buy Tiny Tank, let me in. Hoeg said like 250K is like the bottom line of like what it costs to buy the cheapest of IPs. But maybe Tiny Tank's cheaper than that. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe we could buy Tiny Tank.
That'd be awesome.
Yep.
Easy Allies presents.
At
Tank.
what price could we actually do it? It'd have to be like $3,000.
So we could make a tier that we're just putting money into the Tiny Tank bank.
yeah.
And then like eventually once we reach 250K, we go and we buy Tiny
We would
Tank.
never reach it.
I've just want to see the trailer. Like,
Yes.
we're bringing it back
Yeah.
by popular demand.
Sean Layton comes out with the Tiny Tank shirt on. Like, what is this? A tank or something? I can't tell. It's a
the
real
thing
small
is-
tank.
All we're capable of producing is like an FMV game. So it's just like us, like we have like a CG Tiny Tank. And
We
just
all
like,
wear the same general hat. We just keep changing it.
That sounds pretty great.
Yep. By the way, Richard Hoeg is a sponsor of the Easy Allies. Do not take all of that as legal advice. We always have to disclaim this. That was just a fun segment. But, of course, a blast. What a resource.
Yeah. Thanks, Hoeg.
That was great.
It's all fun and games until somebody coughs up $900,000
Tiny Tank.
and buys Tiny Tank.
They're going to sweep. Yeah, somebody's going to get Tiny Tank next week. They're like,
Swooping in.
I'm a millionaire. I'm taking Tiny Tank, dude.
Next week on the group stream, we open a package. Oh, Tiny Tank.
It's like a signed deed. I hereby bestow Tiny Tank to the Easy Allies.